Hello and welcome to Fox 29's News Now. I'm going to take you over live to a special prosecutor makes an announcement regarding charges against Indiana Attorney General.
I reviewed the statement and then I propounded questions back to Hill through his lawyer, and I got answers to those.
Did you determine if Curtis Hill was drunk that night?
Well, drunk is I won't call it a term of art, but it's a personal opinion. But I determined that he consumed alcohol that night, and you will see in my report, one of the few opinions I think I put in the report, I thought his alcohol consumption was significant based upon the statements of the witnesses.
Is the Inspector General's report complete to your knowledge? And if not, does your report go to her as she prepares hers?
All we did, we wrote our own report separately. At the very end here a couple of days ago, we each gave the other an opportunity to review the reports to make sure that we weren't wrong about facts we were citing. I don't cite very many facts in my report. I cite my reasoning, an explanation for my appointment, and some of the things I considered in making this decision today.
So the IG's report is complete as well?
I'm sorry if I didn't answer that. Yes, it is complete, and I think it's going to be filed today if it's not already filed.
The manner that you interacted with the Attorney General through his attorneys in this video statement, is that a normal way of doing things in an investigation like this?
Well,
or would you have preferred to meet with him face to face?
Is it normal to investigate an Attorney General? So we had to invent procedures. There are choices. You could send a couple detectives in there and interview them, and he might talk to them and he might not. So I just decided that I wanted to be respectful of him and his position. There were accusations against him. He had, I know, claimed in several public statements that nobody had taken his story. So I wanted to hear his story from him first, and so that's why I did it that way.
Separate from the criminal action, you were an elected official. Do you think, as a former elected official, Curtis Hill should remain in office?
That's track one. That's not my track.
Right.
So
but
nice try.
As a former elected official.
No, I'm not. I don't have an opinion about that for you. I'm stuck on track two, which is the criminal case, and that's why I'm here.
Would someone accused of battery normally been afforded the ability to submit a videotape statement with their attorney asking questions instead of being approached by investigators? I mean, it sounds like Hill was never questioned by investigators.
He was not at my behest. And the answer to your question is normally you'd send the detectives out to talk to the person. So if you're asking the question, was he afforded any special treatment, the answer is no. My job was to get to the facts the best I could, the unvarnished facts. You don't go out and put the Attorney General under Klieg lights and have a cross-examination. First of all, he's a lawyer. He's an experienced lawyer and a prosecutor. So you have to find the best way to get the information. That was taken with a cooperative approach, and I feel comfortable with what we got there. This gentleman had a question here.
It sounds like you may have briefed some of the accusers. Can you kind of share a little bit about their view about what you've done here today?
I don't know their view, and I'll leave that to them. They're intelligent ladies, and they have a right to speak for themselves. But they were very cooperative. I was impressed with them, and I think they have a story to tell, and I imagine they'll tell it.
How many people were interviewed, and was there any video from the bar?
There were 56 people interviewed, to my understanding, and I want to say that was all done by the Inspector General's special agents and by the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police. They cooperated fully with me. I'm very appreciative of that. There was no video. There was a video, but it was recycled before. The investigators came out 2 months after this event. So oftentimes we see this where videos are gone after 30 days, and that was the case here, as I'm told.
So is the Inspector General not pressing charge or pursuing charges either?
Well, the Inspector General has, in terms of charges, that's my decision. The Inspector General, by statute, has her own jurisdiction. There are ethical matters to consider, but to my understanding, she is not pursuing anything in that regard. And there's some question whether the ethical rules which apply to state employees actually apply to public officials, and whether the Inspector General really has jurisdiction over that. That's an open question.
Were Curtis Hill's statements made under oath?
No. No, we took no witness statements under oath. No, the 56, and that would not be normal procedure. I don't take witness statements under oath.
So of those 56, of the 4 women and then 52 others, was there corroboration for those accounts?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You can imagine in a crowded bar at 2:30 in the morning, well, actually it was from midnight to 5:30 in the morning, where people were in and out and the alcohol was free, and so that was one of the difficulties, frankly. There's no timeline for me to prove. There's no ability to say this happened at this time, this person was here and that person was there. That was just impossible to come up with a good timeline of events.
In your investigation, do you feel like Curtis Hill did anything immoral or wrong?
I don't offer opinions on morality. I didn't find a criminal case against Curtis Hill to charge and prosecute. Do you have a follow-up question?
I do. So is the timeline sort of at the nub of not being able to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt?
It's one of the things. And the other thing, frankly, is I'm being paid by the Marion County taxpayers. And this would be, I think, having been involved in a number of them, this would be a drawn-out, complicated, legally and factually case that would last a long, long time. The victims would be put through a heck of a lot, and their depositions would be taken. They'd have to testify. It would be a tough, tough case to prove. It would be an expensive case for the taxpayers of Marion County. Not that I live here, but I always have an eye for what is the benefit to going forward with this to get a result. And I couldn't find, that's a small part of the reasoning, but I couldn't find a benefit to going forward with Class B misdemeanor prosecutions.
How much did your investigation cost taxpayers?
Well, I haven't sent them a bill, so it's been free so far.
Ballpark?
Well, I get paid, the Inspector General and Indianapolis Police, they get paychecks, and so they already get paid. I get paid on a rate based upon a full-time prosecutor's salary. It's about $70 an hour. So I will submit a bill at some point, which has to be approved by, I'm going to ask the judge to approve it, and I think it has to be approved by the auditor. It is, at this stage, let's just say, not very much in the scope of things. It's under $10,000, it would be probably. Just a guess? No.
You said you can't pass judgment on the morality of whatever actions Mr. Hill did that night, but are you able to characterize or describe what you concluded he actually did do?
No, I'm not here. I can't characterize it, and it's not that I won't pass judgment because it's not my function.
Is it fair to say that you said you believe them, that he did indeed touch them on their bodies without their permission?
From his statement, he does not deny touching, okay? But there's a lot of vague in-betweens on all that, so there was no denial that there was touching. There's no denial. There's disagreement as to the extent of it, as you might imagine. So there is certainly the stage set for between Curtis Hill and the accusers as to what really happened. But as to the fact that he was there, he was drinking in the establishment, he was around these women, I don't think he probably even knows all the women right now. So there's no confirmation of that. Anybody else?
Will his video statement be released?
No, not by me.
Did Curtis Hill drive home that
I can only describe the facts as they come from witness statements and from Hill. The witness statements, that's the one thing I think that's probably agreed upon. No, he took an Uber ride home. As many did there. Probably necessarily.
Do you think, in your investigation, did Curtis Hill have too much?
Just a little background on this. Indiana Attorney General Curtis Hill, there was an alleged drunken groping of a lawmaker and 3 legislative staffers at a party to mark the end of the legislative session earlier this year. This is a special prosecutor. Is talking about it now. Apparently he's saying that he won't be charged in the groping. So that's just a little background on what's going on right now.
I would say, and again, if you look at my report and you look at the Inspector General's report, there is much time in the Inspector General's, many statements devoted to how he appeared, and so you can make that judgment yourselves when you read the reports. So the evidence of intoxication is more from the standpoint of behavior and appearance than it is from counting the number of drinks that people saw that he had, because that was difficult. That information was difficult to come by. Are we not? Okay. Hey, thank you, everybody. Good to see you.
Everyone, the victims and counsel are going to have a news conference in here if they let us.
And now I would like to take you live to Vice President Pence, head of the National Space Council. He is currently one-on-one with Washington Post Robert Costa as part of the Post Transformers series on space. This is held at the Washington Post Live Center, and it started at 9 a.m. this morning. Later on, we'll come back to that and show you from footage from earlier in the speech.
And our aircraft, our ships at sea, submarines under the sea, our warfighters on the ground regularly rely on information that is obtained, images that are captured by satellite technology. And so the first order of business is ensuring that the infrastructure of our satellite technology is protected. And the reality is, the more we look at our competitors in space, chiefly among them are China and Russia, we see the deployment of technologies by both of those countries, anti-satellite technologies. China, not long ago, actually tested a missile that took out one of their own satellites. We're seeing the deployment of additional new anti-satellite technology that's placed into orbit, literally satellites that are able to move in proximity to existing satellites. All of this informs the fact that we have to have the capacity to protect our existing infrastructure in space. But also what the President's vision is that we stand up a space force that, very much similar to the way that the Air Force was launched after World War II, will evolve into ensuring that America remains as dominant in outer space militarily as we are here on Earth. And that'll be the project of the Space Force going forward. And there are a number of steps that will be launched in the very short term, but that will ultimately lead to the launch of a Department of the United States Space Force in the next National Defense Authorization Act.
What about the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which governs international space law? It bans weapons of mass destruction in space. President Trump, as we know, likes to cut his own deals. Is this administration thinking about renegotiating that treaty?
Well, first and foremost, that treaty, which I think was signed in 1967, does ban weapons of mass destruction in outer space, but it doesn't ban military activity. It actually is it gives nations a fair amount of flexibility in operating for their security interests in outer space. And at this time, we don't see any need to amend the treaty. But as time goes forward, the hope that we could continue to see outer space as a domain where peace will reign. It will require military presence, but we'll continue to aspire to President Kennedy's vision of a sea of peace as opposed to a terrifying domain of war.
On that, do you think that nuclear weapons should be banned from space?
Well, they are now.
Should they always be banned from space?
Well, look, I think that what we need to do is make sure that we provide for the common defense of the people of the United States of America. And that's the President's determination here. I think it's in the interest of every nation to continue to ban the use of nuclear weapons in space. But what we want to do is continue to advance the principle that peace comes through strength. And we truly do believe the best pathway toward advancing human exploration in space, which the President's already announced we're going back to the moon, and then after that to Mars. The way we develop more commercial enterprise in space, and we see the incredible innovation. I visited the Mojave Desert. I saw a number of companies that are operating even as we speak to be able to carry commercial enterprises, space tourism.
What's our deadline for going
mining.
back to the moon?
Well, we're working through that right now, and Jim Bridenstine, being a part of this program today, I'm sure spoke to that with great specificity. But I serve with a president that wants everything yesterday, and I can assure you that our determination is to see Americans back on the moon in the very near future, but shortly thereafter on our way to Mars, and not in an event horizon of 10 and 20 and 30 years, which is the way NASA spoke for much of the last 2 decades, but also an event horizon that says we're going to get there, we're going to get there soon, we're going to get there quickly, and once Americans set their mind to something, we've already demonstrated throughout our history there's nothing we can't accomplish.
Do you worry at all about an arms race? You mentioned Russia and China with Space Force.
Well, look, let's be very clear. There's this whole talk about militarizing space, and what the American people deserve to know is that from the time Sputnik was launched into orbit, we've militarized space. That in a very real sense, space is a warfighting domain, and whether it's China, Russia, other nations in the world, there are security investments being made, not just satellite technology, but also that anti-satellite technology that I talked about. And we really do believe that it's absolutely essential that we meet that moment with American strength, that we meet that moment with American leadership, and that we also recognize that in 2015, China essentially stood up its own Space Force. Russia, in the very same year, assigned a part of its aerospace division to a Space Force. And so what President Trump has initiated here in a very real sense, while America continues to lead in technology and in innovation and in military strength, in terms of organizational structure, this is what our competitors are already doing, and the President's determined to make sure that America leads in space as well from a military standpoint.
Who goes to the moon or to Mars for the United States moving forward? Is it people from NASA astronauts, or is it people like your son, a naval aviator, who may want to go to space?
Well, what I can say is that, and thanks for mentioning my son.
Michael Pence, First Lieutenant?
First Lieutenant, just got his wings as a Marine naval aviator 2 weeks ago, and we couldn't be more proud. But thank you. Look, human space exploration is a civilian operation by NASA. That's what we want it to be. Obviously, as I said at the Pentagon back in August, a great number of our astronauts have also, in their prior lives, worn the uniform of the United States, and we're proud of their service then. But human space exploration is at the very center of what President Trump wants to see us accomplish. Making sure that we have the security in space to advance human space exploration is the underpinning of the Space Force, protecting our interests on Earth, providing for the common defense here for the American people and our interests around the world, but also creating a domain where we can lead mankind into the outer reaches of space. But that'll be a civilian effort. It'll be American boots back on the moon. I look forward to seeing that day, and to seeing Americans land on Mars.
Your tone here, Mr. Vice President, is very measured. You're talking about Space Force as a national project, but President Trump is talking a lot about it on the campaign trail. It's a talking point at his political rallies. Does that risk making Space Force something that has a partisan sheen?
Well, no. I actually think there's broad bipartisan support for Space Force. In fact, in the last National Defense Bill, there was language for what would be called the Space Corps that had broad bipartisan support. This is actually an issue, Bob, that Republicans and Democrats have spoken about for some time, but President Trump has essentially seized on it. And as he does with so many other issues, he's been able to communicate that in a way that's captured the imagination of the American people. And I can tell you, as I've traveled around the campaign during these midterm elections as well, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Space Force, and I actually don't think it's so much partisan as it's just, I think there's many Americans, my age and older, who remember those glory days of the 1960s. I remember huddled around a little black and white television in our basement, watching Neil Armstrong step on to the moon, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And the pride that I felt as an American. And when I became a member of Congress, I actually attended 3 different shuttle launches. And it was the most incredible thing I ever witnessed in my life, to see so much power contained lifting those brave Americans into space. But I think millions of Americans, whatever their politics, would agree that somewhere along the way we lost our vision and our passion for leadership in space. And the President's call for a renewal of our commitment to human space exploration, a return to the moon, reaching out at Mars, the establishment of a Space Force, I think that taps into that American aspiration that we are, in a very real sense, a nation of pioneers. We've always, throughout our history, been pushing the outer envelope. We've been pushing into the undiscovered country. The American people are excited to do that again.
Mr. Vice President, though, you're selling it hard, but does Congress agree with you? Congress has to authorize this. Do we expect the Trump administration to getting an authorization vote on Space Force a priority by the end of 2019?
The short answer to that is yes. The President's made it very clear in the next National Defense Authorization Act that he wants language that authorizes the establishment of the United States Space Force and a department as the 6th branch of the service. But we're taking steps even before that. As we'll announce today when I go over to the War College, the National Space Council is making recommendations to the President to essentially begin with establishing a unified space command, much in the way that we established a Special Forces command. We all remember the Iran hostage crisis during the Carter administration and the disaster in the desert that took place. Shortly after that was when the United States made the decision to establish a unified Special Forces command. So now, Special Forces in all different branches of the service operate under a unified command so that when Special Forces are deployed, it's fully coordinated. And what the President's envisioned here is let's begin by bringing everyone under a unified command. Let's stand up a space development agency so we can establish the authorities necessary, the chain of command, promote the technologies. I mean, we roughly have about 60,000 people in all the different branches of the service and our intelligence community who work in and around space security today. We haven't been neglectful of this. We just haven't brought it all together in one place, and that's what the President purposes to do with the United States Space Force and the department that will establish it. But going to the Congress, asking the Congress for that authorizing legislation is something the President has made it clear is a priority, And we'll be working when we re-elect these Republican majorities on Capitol Hill. We'll be working with re-elected Republican majorities to do just that.
One final thing on Space Force, then I want to talk for a minute about the midterms. When you think about, you mentioned your time in the U.S. House. You were a firebrand conservative back then in the House, challenging leadership. I covered that. But they care about spending billions of dollars. And an Air Force memo shows that Space Force may need $3 billion in its first year, $13 billion in its first 5 years. You know, that's a hard sell. One, do you agree with, is that really the numbers we're expecting for Space Force, that Air Force memo from a couple months ago? And two, will House conservatives and other conservatives in Congress really want to sign on to something that's that big a spending project?
Well, we think the numbers, I know that the Secretary of the Air Force has produced some of those numbers, and great respect for Secretary Wilson. But I would just ask my old colleagues in the Congress, what price freedom? What is the price tag that you place on the security of the United States of America? And I think the reason why the American people are so enthusiastic about Space Force is because they understand that for us to continue to provide for the common defense, to protect America's interests, to stand for freedom in the world, that we have to continue to extend American strength into the outer reaches of space. Now, the good news is an awful lot of what we're going to do is going to be consolidating. As I mentioned, there's roughly 60,000 people today that work in space security in a variety of different agencies. And so this will not be, it will not in the first instance look like other branches of the service that were stood up. It will be a consolidation, we believe, and from there, future Congresses and future administrations can grow and expand and nurture the Department of the Space Force as they see fit.
We'll be following the National Space Council closely. Just to finish on the midterms, you're going to be heading out on the campaign trail soon.
I am.
Immigration's become a major issue. The president keeps talking about this migrant caravan, and he references Middle Easterners that are part of this caravan without evidence. Why is that? And where is the evidence, if any?
Well, it's inconceivable that there are not people of Middle Eastern descent in a crowd of more than 7,000 people advancing toward our border. I mean, the truth is, well, let me the statistics on this. I mean, in the last fiscal year, we apprehended more than 10 terrorists or suspected terrorists per day at our southern border from countries that are referred to in the lexicon as other than Mexico. That means from the Middle East region. I mean, the idea that they would not be in this large throng that what the president of Honduras told me was organized by leftist groups in Honduras, financed by Venezuela, and sent north to challenge our sovereignty and challenge our border. And now it's grown. The president had me reach out to President Hernandez in Honduras, President Morales in Guatemala. We've been working very closely with Mexico. We're going to do everything in our power to prevent this caravan from coming north and violating our border. But ultimately, it is an issue in this election because what human traffickers are doing, what criminal gang members are doing, in this instance, and frankly, in literally every day of the week, where they take cash to bring people up the peninsula in the hopes of them either making a claim for asylum or simply crossing our border illegally to be apprehended, is they're taking advantage of not only our porous border, but loopholes in our laws. Our catch and release program are all used and exploited by human traffickers who have no regard for human life. You know, when I spoke to the president of Guatemala, he told me how at that point they were already beginning to bus some people back to Honduras, elderly, vulnerable children who'd simply been left by the side of the road by the organizers of this caravan. I mean, the truth of the matter is far beyond this caravan, nearly 40% of young girls that make their way into our country at the hands of human traffickers are sexually abused. We determine they've been sexually abused on their way north. It is unconscionable for us to continue to allow this to occur, but the way we can end it, as the President's made clear, is to have a Congress that is willing to not only fund a wall, secure our border, but to close the loopholes that human traffickers and violent gang members use to entice people to make the long and dangerous journey up the peninsula. We really do believe that we've got a crisis at our southern border, but the only way we're going to deal with that crisis in the long term is by bringing about changes in the law. And the American people have a very clear choice to make. I mean, the Democratic Party today supports catch and release. They have opposed the wall. They have opposed efforts for additional internal enforcement and the kind of reforms that, frankly, we've been talking about for more than a decade. The Republican Party is committed to building a wall, committed to closing the loopholes, ending catch and release, reforming a broken immigration system, and it's very much an issue on the minds of people everywhere I go across the country.
Vice President Pence, we've gone way over time. Appreciate you coming to the Washington Post today to discuss Space Force and other issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. Great to be with you. Thank you. Thank you.
As of this moment, we can report to you live and direct from this vantage point at Cape Canaveral. That's
Well, there are new details this morning in the death of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Turkey's president says Saudi officials planned the murder days before he was killed. Doug Luzader had the story this morning on Fox 29 from Washington.
And the murder days before he was killed.
Wow. All right, Doug, bring us up to date.
Yeah, you know, that issue of premeditation is a critical one because it does fly in the face of what the official Saudi story is.
Kaşıkçının vahşi bir cinayete kurban gitti.
Jamal Khashoggi was slain in a vicious, violent murder.
Turkey's president not mincing words, saying a Saudi team killed writer Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Turkey 3 weeks ago, and that 18 Saudis should stand trial in Turkey. It's clear that the shifting Saudi storyline on this, a denial followed by an admission that Khashoggi was inadvertently killed after a fistfight, isn't holding up too well. President Trump, who once hedged on the issue, is now a skeptic.
I am not satisfied with what I've heard.
And the questions do mount. Turkish media have shown what appears to be Saudis burning documents outside the consulate the day after Khashoggi disappeared. And there are even reports of a Khashoggi body double leaving the consulate in what may have been part of a cover-up effort. CIA Director Gina Haspel has traveled to Turkey, where investigators are trying to determine what exactly happened to Khashoggi. At the center of this is Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who many believe ordered the killing of Khashoggi, who had been a critic of the Saudi government. An investment conference the prince organized that began today has been shunned by many political and business leaders. But Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, who is now skipping the conference, still met with the Crown Prince before it began, highlighting just how critical and difficult the U.S.-Saudi relationship really is.
The administration is clearly trying to give the Saudis some time to figure out their way out of this, but it's really unclear how that's possible. We've got a lot of eggs in the Saudi basket right now, and the Saudis just look like they have a lot of blood on their hands at the highest levels.
Well, the Saudis, of course, initially denied any involvement in Khashoggi's death, and then the story shifted. The question this morning is whether it's going to change yet again. Mike and Alex.
So, okay, God. Just real quickly here. Hey, Doug, we'll see you again tomorrow. Look at the picture that they put out, surveillance footage. So the real Khashoggi is going in on the right-hand side, and then a body double, like wearing the dead man's clothes, comes out a few days later to try to make it look like he did leave the building. Suddenly he has more hair, and it's dark.
Well, you better listen up before you pick up lunch. A massive food recall is impacting food at Whole Foods, 7-Eleven, and more. Tracy Carrasco joined Fox 29 Good Day Philadelphia this morning with more information.
All right, this is one of the biggest food recalls I've ever heard of. Tracy, how many stores are involved here?
A number of stores. We've got Walmart, Whole Foods, 7-Eleven, Kroger, Trader Joe's, Harris Teeter, all because of 1 million pounds of ready-to-eat salads and pre-made food, like those entrees you see, the pizzas, the wraps, all of that stuff being recalled over concerns of salmonella and listeria. So definitely want to take notice of this. Maybe you bought one of these, picked one up for lunch. Toss it out, take it back to the store, just don't eat it. McCain Foods, they told the USDA about this, about the products that they shipped. They said that some of them may contain ingredients like corn, diced onions, other vegetables that could be contaminated with the bacteria.
So that's what it is? Is that why it's such a wide variety of things? It's the vegetables?
Yep. Exactly. Yep, the vegetables. That's usually, I feel like, when we see a lot of the listeria, it's that.
Or the lettuce.
It's poop on lettuce that they didn't wash off.
Well, thank you for that breakdown.
Well, sure.
Mike.
It's a breakdown of the whole thing.
The scientific fact behind it.
Right.
Sure, Tracy. I try to provide that.
Now, fecal matter, you just gotta, all right.
Oh, it's poop. Well, okay, fecal matter. Can you trace it back to a state? I think last time it was Arizona.
You know what? We haven't heard yet about tracing it back to a state. I'm not sure where McCain Foods is based out of, but they send it, all of that, out to other distributors, and then the distributors send that out to the stores. So it's really hard to trace back, I think.
Well,
especially if they don't know what vegetable it is, really. They're saying it's a number of different things. Who knows?
Well, I don't know what to eat today, then.
Right? It's so general.
I was at Whole Foods yesterday. I was at 7-Eleven this morning. I've been at Walmart.
I love as long as you didn't buy any of those packaged. I mean, those are so convenient. They're so easy, but that's really what
the packaged salads?
Yeah,
because Mike gets on
packaged salads, the pre-made. I think it's just the salads that come ready to go.
Yeah, that's
not necessarily the ones in the bags, but just the to-go salads, the individual lunch salads that people pick
the one
up,
that already has
individual entrees,
the toppings on it and everything.
Yes.
Pull the little thing off.
Yeah, and then just pour the dressing. It's a little cup of dressing on the side.
Yeah, I always say, every time we do this story, Tracy, this is how lazy we've become in our society. We can't even crack open a head of lettuce anymore or peel carrots.
Takes time.
Yeah.
When was the last time you've done it? That's what I want to know.
Oh, it's been a long, long time.
When's the last time you cooked?
Now, they're even taking the grapes off of the stems. Have you noticed that?
No.
Individual grapes in little bags. So you don't have to go like that anymore. Oh.
All right, confession.
Wow.
I buy already chopped onions, the fresh onions you can get. So I don't have to, I don't want to cry and go through all that business, so I get them already.
When was the last time I cooked? Don't remember. Really, I've lost memory.
Has it been decades?
Oh, it was during the Carter administration, I'm sure. Back when I was alive. Tracy, we'll see you tomorrow.
A former football coach in Bensalem is facing some serious charges. He failed to show up for his trial, and now a manhunt is underway. Lauren Johnson is live from the Bensalem Police Department with more on the case.
He is 48 years old. He's on the run, apparently, from authorities, and now Bensalem Township Police, as well as Bucks County authorities, are trying to track him down. They have revoked his bail and issued a bench warrant for the former football coach. Let's take a look at his picture. This is Sean Westmoreland of Westchester. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is now asked to call authorities and report to them immediately. He was out on bail. He paid 10% of $300,000 for his freedom, and yesterday he was supposed to be coming to court for the start of his trial, but he never showed up. He's accused of raping a 15-year-old while he was a football coach at Bensalem Ramblers Athletic Association. One of the victims he assaulted on numerous occasions, and it all started when she was 4 years old. Another victim reported the man had sex with her against her will in the parking lot of a funeral home. When he was arrested last summer, we learned that Westmoreland was picked up at the Exton Mall, where he did have a job, but authorities say he was living at a homeless shelter at that time. Now he's on the run, and people familiar with this case are disgusted.
He's just a pervert, and he should be arrested and go to jail for a long, long time.
This is crazy. These kids need all the help in the world. There's no reason why these people should be even on the streets.
It's terrible. It's just a bad world we live in today.
You don't know who's living down the street from you, so you have to keep extra eye on your kids these days. And it's gotten really bad over the years.
Deputy District Attorney Kristen McElroy released a statement saying, "We want the community to know that we are actively searching for Mr. Westmoreland, and we look forward to the day we bring him to justice." Now, those three victims were the first to come forward initially when the charges were filed, but authorities did believe there could be more victims in this case. Of course, we will not find out those details until the trial begins, and that can't happen until Mr. Westmoreland is in custody.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, anticipation is building along with the Mega Millions jackpot. It could reach $2 billion by tonight's drawing. Can someone just win it already? Steve Keeley has more.
With this lottery jackpot, the highest ever, the hype seems to be equally highest ever before tonight's drawing. Drawing out first ever lottery ticket buyers who don't want to be left out of the champagne wishes and caviar dreams.
You got to spread it out through all the stores. So I buy $10 in every single store I walk in. Right now I'm up to $80. So by the end of the day, I say I'll be at about $1.60. But for $1.6 billion, you got to have a dream, right?
Do you normally go to 16 stores in between these drawings?
No.
So you're purposely driving from store to store to store to buy lottery tickets?
Yes.
Now, $160, to me, that's kind of a mini jackpot. Isn't that kind of a lot of money?
Yes, it is. I work hard for my money, very hard for my money.
But you don't think the 160 is wasted?
No.
1 in 302 million plus?
No. Because I lay in bed at night and I say to myself, in the morning I could be a billionaire. And I might not have to go to work the next day. My wife takes care of the bills, so she's a good girl, so she makes sure all the bills are paid.
Does she like you buying all these lottery tickets?
Well, she's going to know now because she's probably watching the show right now.
And does she know you're going from store to store, 16 stores?
No, stop it.
What are your chances of winning?
Okay, very low. 1 in 302,575,350. So very low.
Why do we keep playing?
I think we keep playing because we're excited, for that kind of dream. Yeah, the chance of winning is so low, but the whole concept that somebody's got to win. My thought was, it's more intuitive and less mathematical, but no matter which 5 numbers, 6 numbers you pick, it really doesn't matter. Your probability of winning is the same. But when we talk about kind of how much money you would make if you actually won, if you could pick numbers that other people don't play, things that aren't birthdays, maybe some larger numbers, even 5 numbers in a row, it doesn't matter, but 5 large numbers, and now if you hit, you're potentially maybe less likely to hit with somebody else, so you could take home more cash.
So this time tomorrow, we'll know if the Mega Millions drawing has made its first winner since July a new billionaire, or we get all hyped up again for its first ever $2 billion jackpot drawing Friday night. That's for today's drawing?
That's for today's drawing, yes.
How much did you spend?
I spent $75 in tickets.
What'd you spend for the last week's drawing?
About 20.
Now, why'd you go up to 75? Because the money went up?
Yes, 110%, yes.
75, is that within your budget?
Oh, yes.
What do you have budgeted for a lottery?
About highest 75, that's all I can afford.
So if you don't hit today and no one else hits, and it's $2 billion plus for the Friday drawing, are you going to go 75 or lower?
75.
Oh, the odds are outrageous. The odds are outrageous. It's some millions to 1? Yeah, the odds are just too high. But you got to play to win.
In Bridesburg, Steve Keeley, Fox 29 News. Back to you.
The 76ers are honoring strength. The team labeled a local girl as Strong Kid of the Game last week after her incredible story of survival. And this morning she was in our studio to share it with us.
Well, last week, the Sixers honored a young girl who was hurt during a shooting in her neighborhood 2 years ago. But despite that dangerous encounter, she's staying strong, and she's not letting it slow her down. Judeli Sanchez, Juju as she's called, was shocked when she realized Sixer Robert Covington was standing right behind her as she held tight to the jersey with her name on it. We met Juju 2 years ago in North Philadelphia. At least 19 shots were fired from a high-powered assault rifle and a handgun while she and a friend were getting snacks at a local convenience store. Bullet fragments ripped through her skin.
It was like somebody poked you extra hard.
Silly question, but how much did that hurt?
Like on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 10.
This is what the then 12-year-old said when asked about street violence.
They should probably stop because they're hurting people bad. And God don't like that.
After she got off her crutches, she joined Girls on the Run and completed her first 5K over the summer. Her mom even walked beside her. She doesn't just run, she dances. Check out her moves on the court. Now that Juju is in high school, she's hoping to move into a leadership role with the Girls on the Run organization and help coach.
Look who's here. Judeli is here.
Juju.
Hey, Juju. Good to see you.
Hi.
And your mom, Elizabeth, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And Leanne Johnson over there. Coach, good to have you here as well.
Thank you. With Girls on the Run.
So how was the... You were dancing on the court.
Yeah.
And you were crying, too. A lot of emotions, huh?
I was excited, emotional. It was just like
How long have you been a Sixers fan?
A long time.
Most of your life?
Yeah.
What are you, in 9th grade now?
Yeah.
Where do you go to school?
Oh, Masbom.
Oh, yeah.
And you love Robert Covington, don't you?
Yes, I love him and Ben Simmons.
So how cool was that? What did he say to you?
He was like, have fun, and I was like, good luck, and then he was like, thank you, and then I hugged him again.
What did he think of your moves? Because you had some great moves.
He was like, good, nice. He was like, nice moves, and I was like.
So, Mom, tell us about a couple of years ago when, again, what happened that night on the streets?
She was in a corner store. She just got caught in the store.
In a crossfire of somebody shooting at each other.
Yeah.
And so what do you have in your leg now?
She has fragments. She got 2 bullets with fragments.
Okay, and which leg is it?
My right.
Do you feel it?
When it gets too cold.
Really?
Oh, really?
But it doesn't affect, I mean, we saw you dancing, so it doesn't affect your movement and you run. And
Were you running before you were shot?
No.
No.
So how did you get into it?
I was running like on the streets with my brother playing tag and stuff, but like when I heard about the program, I wanted to join to show girls that they don't have to be scared or let something that happened to you affect what you could do.
And now how many races? You have your medals here, so how many races have you done?
I did 2.
Wow. And how did that make you feel to finish something like that?
It made me feel awesome because I finally get to approach what I wanted to do in the first place.
So explain Girls on the Run.
So it's a program where we have girls from different areas. For us, we're from Potter Thomas School, the after-school program where we have girls running. But it's more than running, it's to build their mind, soul, and body. So as they run, we go through different stages of what they need to work on and trying to build their confidence. And Judeli, I remember when she started and how nervous she was, and she has grown so much. By the day we got to race day, she was amazing.
Mom,
and just has grown in confidence.
Have you seen a change in 2 years?
Yes, a big change.
In what way?
She grew up.
Wow. Yes.
And do you think it's partly because of what happened to her and this?
Yes.
Or, yeah. How does it feel for you as a mother to, especially when we played that video, to see how far she's come and where she's come from to the smiling, happy girl now?
It feels good. Yes.
Yes. And to hear her talk about, because she says she wants to talk to others and encourage other girls.
Right.
And that seems like that's pretty special.
It is. Just keep motivating other people.
While you were standing here waiting to go on, we ran a story about another shooting in Fairhill overnight. You still live in that area?
Yes, I do.
So do you worry every day?
That's our main concern.
Yeah.
And how's it been for you, Juju?
It's been hard because like you hear it out, like the noise outside, and it's like it doesn't help when there's like little kids there and they still consistently bring out weapons and fight over nothing, over drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
What do you tell the other kids that live near you? I mean, do you guys talk about it?
Yeah, like because like people are starting to move away, so it's just like we're losing people every day, and it's not even supposed to be like that. The world has to change because we're losing people.
Perfect way to put it. I mean, a child at 12, at any age, should not be dealing with that every day of their life and every night. Well, keep up the good work. You gonna keep running?
Yes.
Let's do it.
We're certainly proud of you.
How do we get involved with Girls on the Run?
We have a contact Carrie from Girls on the Run, and you can go online and sign up to be a coach or to be a volunteer to run.
That's great.
Perfect.
We'll put that on our website too, fox29.com. Good to have you here.
Nice to have you.
And keep us updated, all right? Okay. Perfect.
She's met Robert Covington.
I know. She's a star.
I know. I haven't.
Earlier, we took a look at Vice President Mike Pence speaking with the Washington Post's Robert Costa as part of the Post series on space. Here's some of the footage from the panel that was held earlier that we rolled on, and you can take a look at that now.
Einstein, I'd like to ask you a question first. The United States was intensely focused on space in the 60s during the Apollo era. It was something that presented this unitary, shared vision for the entire country. What do you think it would take for us to see another golden age in space like that? What would it look like? How would we know if we were in it?
That's a wonderful question, and certainly it's something that we're very interested in NASA, and certainly something this administration is very interested in. The president recreated the National Space Council for the first time in 25 years when he became president, and he put the vice president as chairman of the National Space Council. And in fact, when I leave here, I'm going to a National Space Council meeting. So this administration is very focused on space on a whole lot of levels. But certainly one of the very first space policy directive that came from the president was we're going to go to the moon. But what he did is he wants to do it very differently than we've ever done it before. This is not a recreation of the Apollo era that we all think so fondly of. This is, in essence, creating a sustainable architecture between the Earth and the moon where we can go back and forth over and over again over a long period of time with landers, with robots, with rovers, and of course with humans, and do it with commercial partners and do it with international partners, utilizing the resources of the moon to keep the sustainable architecture in place.
Let me just follow up on that. So one thing that I learned from NASA, actually, doing my research, is that its budget during the Apollo era peaked at 5% of the entire federal budget. So the administration, as you said, wants to get to the moon and beyond. But how do you do it and support the crucial science missions with so much less money proportionately?
Right now, it's about 0.4%, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's less than a tenth of what it was.
It's a very different time. So that's the...
Yeah. So the first thing the president did is he put out his budget request, and his budget request actually took NASA's budget up by $1 billion. So when you have a $19 billion budget and you go up by $1 billion, that's a pretty significant increase. And even before I got confirmed, we had an omnibus appropriation bill in the House that actually increased NASA's budget by $1.7 billion. So we're seeing bipartisan support and support from the administration for a budget increase. Now, I think it's important to recognize that when you talk about the budget as a NASA's budget as a percentage of the federal budget, we have to remember that a lot of the federal budget has grown significantly. And so while it may be a smaller percentage, it's not necessarily because NASA shrunk, it's because the rest of the government grew, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Before we move on, can I talk about the golden era and what that meant as a scientist, a space scientist? That era, I was just a kid when we landed on the moon, and I was one of those kids watching that black and white thing, not understanding what was happening, but understanding it was an amazing moment. And I went on to be part of the space program, to work on the Voyager mission, to fly by Uranus and Neptune. I went on to work with the Hubble Space Telescope. It has been a golden era of planetary exploration. And what we do at the Planetary Society is advocate for that. We have revealed our solar system not to be points of light, but worlds. Where are we now, though? We are on the brink of a new golden era. We now know, because of NASA's telescopes and telescopes by the National Science Foundation, that almost every star you see in the sky has a planetary system around it. So we have gone from just a few planets to thousands of planets. And this is an amazing moment in science, to be on the edge of exploring all these worlds.
But isn't it different? And, you know, Bill, you grew up in the Apollo era, and you're a communicator. So it seems to me, I want to bounce this off of you. Haven't we become kind of space distracted? You know, there was one story, it was getting to the moon.
So
Sagan had one show, Cosmos, everybody watched it.
Well,
now
keep in mind, we went to the moon on account of the Cold War. I mean, it was a Cold War effort, and you could argue that it was successful. But then the amazing science that spun off of that has led to the internet and mobile phones and global positioning and all these other things, because space exploration has become routine, or in some aspects. And that's nothing but great. And to Heidi's comment, what happened was I took one class from Carl Sagan when I was in engineering school. And now I'm the CEO. I left the room and there was a vote, and now I'm the CEO. But there was estimated that there were maybe a planet around every 100 stars. Well, now we think, in order of magnitude, there's 10 planets around every star. And this gets into the expression billions and billions. It really is amazing how many planets there must be out there. And so, as I always say, there's two questions we always ask. And if you meet somebody who hasn't asked these questions, they're lying to you. Where did we come from? And are we alone in the universe? And these are just deep, fundamental questions. And they're within us. And if you want to know the answers, you have to explore space. And everybody, to Heidi's point, it is very reasonable that we will find evidence of life on another world while we're all still alive, which would be astonishing. I mean, it would tell you, first of all, what if there's no evidence at all of life? That would mean, wow, we are unique in a way that's literally hard to imagine. But the other thing, it's very reasonable that we'll find life. Just think what it would mean. It would be like Copernicus or Galileo. It would be just fundamental. It would change the way everybody feels about being a living thing.
To Bill's point, because I think he's right. Just in the 6 months I've been the NASA administrator, we now know that methane cycles on Mars are perfectly in order with the seasons of Mars. We also know that there are complex organic compounds on the surface of Mars. This is just within the last 6 months. Now, that doesn't guarantee life, but it increases the probability that there is life. And it's up to us to find it. Also, since I've been the NASA administrator, we now know that under the surface of Mars, about 1.5 kilometers under the surface, we have found liquid water. These are astonishing discoveries.
So everywhere there's water on Earth, everywhere there's dampness, there's something alive. And so just think if there's Martian microbe. I mean, it'd just be astonishing, and we do that kind of exploration.
It's not the only place in the solar
That's
system
right.
either,
Well, let's talk about Europa, for example. Yeah. Jupiter's moon Europa, which is a little ice ball, but under that crust of ice, we believe there's a liquid water ocean. And I want to tie this back to what Administrator Bridenstine was talking about, the human spaceflight program. One way we've been able to track the plumes of water we think exist on Europa is using the Hubble Space Telescope. And one reason the Hubble Space Telescope has been the most revolutionary tool in astrophysics for 28 years is because it was serviced by astronauts. It was launched on the shuttle program, and the astronauts went up there. They took out old instruments. They put in new ones. They took out old gyroscopes. They put in new gyroscopes, which are working again, in case you're wondering. And we do hope to be back on Sky with Hubble very soon. I'm very excited about it. So astronauts, The human spaceflight program works hand in glove with the science side, and I don't ever want to separate them. We need them both.
But that actually brings up something I wanted to ask about, which is the International Space Station. Administrator Bridenstine, you've hailed this new era of spaceflight, and this involves shuttling on board commercially designed craft to the station. But you've also talked about phasing out funding for this research hub and having the commercial sector eventually take over. So my question is, what happens if markets don't evolve in the way that we think or hope, and commercial entities don't find it worthwhile to do the kinds of things that are happening there now?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and it's an important question that we're gonna struggle with until we get the solution. The answer is this: we want to make sure we have zero gap in human presence in low Earth orbit and even beyond. We want to make. We have had humans living and working in space now for 18 years straight, and we want to make sure that never stops. So, in order to do that, we need to see a very robust commercial marketplace develop in low Earth orbit, and we believe that that's eminently possible. And what the President's budget request did is it said, hey, look, we need to start now very seriously considering how do we get to a day where commercialization happens in low Earth orbit. Now, if you go back in time to the Cold War, we came to the end of the Apollo program. We went right into Apollo-Soyuz, which was an international cooperation between the United States and the Soviet Union at the time. So that demonstrated the success of the Apollo program, the fact that these two superpowers have decided that we're going to collaborate and work together on space. That went forward with the Mir program and the shuttle program, which were a collaboration as well, and then now the International Space Station, as you've identified.
It's in NASA's charter, international cooperation.
Absolutely.
In NASA's, and so when international partners collaborate in space, the overall cost of whatever you're going to do might go up. Exploring Europa, for example, but the cost per agency goes way down, significantly down. And whatever else the space station has done, it has been fantastic for diplomacy.
Do you agree, does the Planetary Society agree that a commercialization fate is inevitable in the long run? Is that something that you're... No?
So I asked the administrator to comment on that. But now, some disclosure, I applied to be an astronaut 4 times. But it is not clear. Let's go with that.
Had I been the administrator, you'd have been selected.
Yeah, careful what you wish for. Yeah. But it's not clear that we can go to the moon and to Mars and operate the International Space Station in the current budget, even with the increase in NASA's budget. Those 3 things all going at once are tricky. And the International Space Station is a national lab. So come on down, everybody, and fly up there and conduct things the way we conduct science, the way we conduct science in other national labs. But this is a problem to be figured out. Now, no matter what we do, no matter what the future is, I think we all agree we want to get beyond low Earth orbit. So, the old saying, if you have a classroom globe, which in English units would be 12 inches, 30-centimeter globe, low Earth orbit is just it's 3/8 of an inch above the globe. I mean, it's cool, and I would love to go there, and we have some astronauts coming up in a few minutes, but we want to go farther and deeper. And you're a scientist. I love science. I'm kooky for science.
You're a science guy.
I am the science guy. But keep in mind that when humans go to a place, 2 things are going to happen. When you explore, when just writ large explore, 2 more things are going to happen. You're going to make discoveries, whether it's your backyard or Mars, you're going to make discoveries. But the other thing is you're going to have an adventure. And that is what engages us in a way that is priceless. Now, everybody, you can ask the old question, should we pay teacher salaries, build a new baseball stadium, or explore space? And that hope that if it was just a zero-sum thing, we'd pay teachers, okay, for crying out loud. But it's not one or the other. You got to do everything. And so the NASA budget is an extraordinary value. If you ask people around the world what they think of NASA, NASA is the best brand the United States has.
Yeah. But I'm going to interrupt it in a lot of softball to Administrator Bridenstine.
Okay.
Let me share with you a vision of why I think we ought to move beyond low Earth orbit and get out there away, like we're not just an inch, but maybe, to the moon or halfway to or beyond the moon, maybe even Lagrange 2. The reason I would like to do that is because I'm imagining building with astronauts an amazingly large space telescope, larger than James Webb. Something that maybe we have to assemble in orbit, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool. That would be amazing.
Or assemble on the surface of the moon, which is very quiet.
I don't know if I would agree with that.
See, this is cool. This is a real meeting. On the moon, no. On the moon, Mars. It's like I've been in this world for
but
21
on
years.
Earth, we're struggling with the James Webb telescope right now.
Well, it's a hard problem. No one's ever
We've never built a James Webb before. You can't. Like I was saying before, you can't buy a kit for James Webb
What is
telescope.
NASA's outlook on that? It's just
and of course, I've been on the Hill, of course, making sure that we are in compliance with the law, and we have great support from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle for the James Webb. Let me just say this. With the James Webb Space Telescope, what we're doing, we are inventing new things in order to put something on orbit that is going to not only see distances, but it's going to see back in time to the very dawn of light in the universe, the very beginning of space and time. We're going to be able to see that, the very first light in the universe. We have models over what that might look like. Bill Nye knows exactly what it looks like.
Oh, sure.
But what we know is that our models are not right, and we're going to learn a lot. We're going to be able to see out to the very edge of the universe. We're, in fact, the planets that we now know. All of these stars have many planets around each star. We're going to be able to not only see those planets, but we're going to be able to characterize the atmosphere around those planets with the James Webb Space Telescope to determine if those planets could be inhabitable or not. So this is going to be transformative. It's going to rewrite science books. Bill Nye is going to have a lot of work to do when this gets.
Bring it on.
Worth a couple more years and a couple.
So here's the thing.
But just to be clear, it will be able to do that work if we are lucky and win the lottery twice over and find systems that are close enough to us that will be within the reach of James Webb Space Telescope. And we do have the TESS satellite, which is looking right now. Hopefully we'll find them, and maybe we will. I don't know if y'all bought your lottery tickets right now. It's super high, so maybe we can do that. But the reason I was talking about a future space telescope is we want to really be able to answer this question, yes or no. Do Earth-like planets around sun-like stars truly have the ability to be habitable? And we may not be able to answer that question with Webb. That's why we need to move forward. And you and I talked a little bit about this, and you said, don't say that, Heidi, and I'm going to say it anyway, because I think this audience understands this. Building a facility like Hubble or James Webb or some future space telescope takes time. You can't do it in a year or 2 or 5 or 10. You sometimes take 20 years to truly build a cutting-edge revolutionary facility. And that's true for many of NASA's great missions. And we have to understand that and just, take it as part of the reality that we work in.
And so for the politicians out there, when the NASA budget is uncertain, when there's a proposal to cut 5%, no, let's put back 10%. It's very difficult for programs to count on the funding and then make adequate plans. And so this leads to cost overruns.
Let me go to Twitter. Dr. Kim Binstead asks, I think this is directed to you, how can NASA reach its goals when the destination, the moon, Mars, etc., changes with every administration?
That's a critically important question.
Yeah, you've been here 6 months, man.
So here's the thing, and I think this is an important point to make. What we want to do at the moon is prove capability, prove technology, build this reusable architecture. So we want everything to be reusable. We talk about reusable rockets. We've seen what happens with reusable rockets. The cost goes down, access goes up. Well, we want the entire architecture between the Earth and the moon to be reusable. We want tugs from Earth orbit to lunar orbit to be reusable. We want a reusable command module in orbit around the moon. We call it Gateway. Think of it
Again,
as
this
a
was
reusable
earlier at the
command module.
Washington Post Transformer
And we want
Space.
reusable landers
This
to
is
go back
still
out
going
to
on.
the
You can
surface
catch
of
it
the
on
moon
Washington
with
Post's
rovers and robots
website.
and humans.
They are live at this event. I just want to take you now over to some breaking news. This is coming out of Oakland, California. It is a reported construction fire. It looks like there's heavy damage, and crews are working on the scene right now to tame this fire. So apparently this fire has been ongoing since overnight. Firefighters were battling multiple structure fires that erupted in Oakland overnight. The largest is a 5-alarm fire at the under-construction condominium complex on Grand Avenue and Filbert Street. Firefighters say embers from the fire burned a home on Grand and Isabella, another spot fire about a mile away on Peralta and 32nd. The 5-alarm was reported around 2:06 a.m., and that's what we're looking at now. The complex included 6 structures, all of which caught fire. 4 of the buildings are a total loss, officials said. So this is a live look at that site where it looks like they're still trying to knock down the fire. And I just want to switch you over one more time. This is a live look at the search for Jamie Kloss in Barone, Wisconsin. The Barone County Sheriff's Office asked for 2,000 volunteers to gather today in order to search for the Hungry Hollow, to search Jamie Kloss on the Hungry Hollow grounds. It is not clear if this search is related to a tip regarding the location of Jamie Kloss, who was 13, or evidence that it may lead to the teen. She has been missing for a week, and local police has previously stated that there was no evidence to justify a ground search, but yet here they are live as they get this search underway for the 13-year-old who went missing a week ago. Her parents were found dead in the home, and ever since she's been missing. Looks like cars are lining up in the dozens for the search for Jamie Kloss. This is in Barone, Wisconsin at Hungry Hollow Grounds. The Barone County Sheriff's Office asked volunteers to show up to this location to search for the missing 13-year-old. So this is a live look of this search going underway. Make sure to check in with Fox 29. We'll have the latest update throughout the day. Check our Twitter, our Facebook pages, and as well as our broadcasts tonight. Well, thank you for watching Fox 29 News Now. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter for all the latest, and catch our broadcasts at 5, 6, 10, and 11 tonight.